Here's an episode I've been wanting to do for over a year now, but I have never felt comfortable enough to sit down and talk about it. I didn't feel ready, and I think that was true. I think I wasn't ready, but I'm ready now. So let's talk about it. You know, when you're just in high school and it's like, so cool, you're dating someone. Like, I remember people were always off and on in relationships in high school. They'd be dating one person one week, one person the next week, another person the next week. They were on and off relationships, but it was, it's people exploring. You're exploring life, right? And I do remember there was a good period of time where I really felt like, if I am in a relationship, like, wow, that's really cool, right? And it didn't impact me that much because I really didn't date until my senior year of high school. I really just didn't care. And it just didn't really matter to me that much. But I do remember when I was with someone, anytime I did feel very almost accomplished. Like it was almost something to, I don't want to say show off, but I was very aware of the fact that like people knew that I was dating someone, right? And I think that's relatively common in high school, but I do remember there was a big portion of my life, or not a big portion, but there was a portion of my life where I had that mindset. And it did get to a point where in one of my relationships, I really should have let that go a while before, but I didn't because I didn't like the idea of not being in a relationship, specifically that relationship. I just was so aware of the fact that people knew that I was in a relationship, and I didn't want people to know that I was no longer in a relationship. So I should have let go of it way sooner. I should have looked at the signs, but I didn't, and I really ended up hurting myself with that. And I also really did as much as I possibly could to make it look like the relationship was great. And it was not. It was very, very bad. But I did my best to make it look like it was not, that was not the case. And I don't really want to talk about my past relationships because I don't necessarily think that that's the point of this episode. I mean, I'm happy to talk about it online in a way that I can talk about what I've learned and what my experience was, because I do think that's important, and I think a lot of people go through similar things. But my point in this episode right now is to really talk about the fact that I have learned, like, what it was like for me after leaving that relationship. So I left that relationship after I don't know how long, and I very much so chose to leave, and I should have done it sooner, but I did not. So I left, and I asked for no contact. And I think that was one of the best things I could have done for myself, was asking for no contact and saying, like, this is a must. This is my boundary. I do not want to have any sort of contact, because it allowed me to go through and figure out all of the things that I needed to figure out. And some of those things were like, I needed to be on medication, and I hadn't been on medication, partly because of the relationship. And I had a lot of limiting beliefs, and I had a lot of beliefs about medication because of that relationship and thought processes, and I felt very weak after that relationship. And I had a lot to get through, and I had a lot to process through, and I had a lot to grow in terms of, I had so many beliefs that came out of that I needed to reverse. And some of them were things that I had never even thought of before. I had never even, things like, what even is a good relationship in my mind now, because I honestly had never even thought of that. But then after getting out of one that was so hurtful, I realized I need to figure out what it is that I even want. And that, honestly, like, being single this time has been so important to me because I have spent so much time just getting to know myself. And I think that being in the relationship in the first part, or just being in a relationship in the first part, was like really helpful because it taught me what I don't want. It taught me what I do want and what I don't want. It taught me, what I needed to work on with myself. It taught me the parts of myself that I realized I had no idea, like who am I? What is it that I value? What do I want in a relationship? Like all of these different types of things that I hadn't even processed through before and I didn't even know the answer to. And so all of a sudden, when I got out of this relationship, I started to really, I felt very, I'm going to be honest, I felt so embarrassed at first. I felt really embarrassed because, one, the reason why I left the relationship, I felt very embarrassed by because I could not believe I had let it get to a point where it was that bad. And I felt really embarrassed that I had even let that happen. And I also was so embarrassed that I wasn't in the relationship anymore. Again, it had a really big, I was so aware of the fact that people knew what was going on in my life and, that I was in a relationship. So all of a sudden when I wasn't, I was very aware of people knowing that I wasn't. And actually, I think less people knew than I thought. Because I did get, I would see people I hadn't seen for a while and they'd ask and I'd be like, oh no, that's over. But I really had a lot of my own pride and my own just identity riding on that relationship. And so when that left, I had to figure out okay, who even am I? And when that left, it was really hard, but I also will say that it was the first times I had smiled in a really long time. Once I got through that grief and anger and pain and the embarrassment, I really realized, I started smiling again and it was amazing. And so now in this time where I have not been in a relationship, it's been 1.5 years and I am so incredibly grateful for it. And I also I've had moments where I've maybe been interested in someone or someone's been interested in me, and I really have to make the decision of, is this something that I would want to get into or that I would even want to explore? I really do truly believe after being in a relationship that hurt me so much, once I was able to be single, I realized that I would much rather have that over anything other than a wonderful relationship. I would much rather be single the rest of my life and live in a way that I am truly happy and myself and feeling amazing than any relationship that would hurt me. And that doesn't mean I'm not going to try, right? I might get in a relationship someday that doesn't work out, right? I'm not saying I'm going to wait until I meet the person I'm going to marry. I have no way of knowing that, but I do know that I keep an eye out for the things that just won't work for me, the things that are my non-negotiables. And I'm not going to be flexible on those, I guess, right? There's a lot of things in a relationship that comes with being able to make compromises, to talk through things, to make changes, right? But when it comes to your non-negotiables, the things that you value the most in a relationship, the things that, your values, those are non-negotiables. And I've learned that, I'm not gonna make compromises for those, because I know that someday, if the time is right, if it's meant to happen, a person will come along that is able to fulfill those things or is able to work with me in those things. I've really started to value my alone time. I started to take myself out on solo dates, to go out alone, to do things alone, to just get to really know myself above anything else. Before I can even ever consider being in a relationship, I needed to know myself, and I didn't in my past relationships. So in this time, I would love to talk about this again, but I think we're going to leave it at this for now. And I am more than happy to talk about it more for people if they are interested, if you are interested. But overall, being single, it's scary, especially when, if you first get out of a relationship. But I don't know. I knew that I could do it. And now here I am, and I don't regret it at all. I think that it's been honestly one of the greatest gifts in my life to be able to explore that and get to be myself and get to know myself. That's what I've learned, and I really do stand by that. So I will see you next time, and be nice to yourself. Just get to know yourself. I know it's hard, but it's a gift.